So this is the third part of a series that I'm doing for tree practice, and I'm looking at different types of trees from a pictorial reference. So this one now is copper beech, and we are going to do this in the distance and in the foreground. So I'm just wetting a section of the paper and talk to you about the colours that I've got. So these colours I've used on a previous picture, and I think it's just really important to show you how you can reuse the colours and how it's important to learn to colour mix. So I can make a copper beech colour using the colours that I've got on this pad. So on this palette, sorry, I've got raw sienna, I've got rose madder. So I'm going to take the rose madder into a bit of raw sienna. I'm using a round number 6, and I'm just popping a little bit of water in. There's not a huge amount of the raw sienna, there is more of the rose madder because we need that sort of coppery colour. And then I'm going to take a tiny touch of ultramarine blue. So bit by bit, on my brush. So that's now gone quite purple. Take a little bit more of the raw sienna. So you're just dabbing a little bit on your brush. So any yellow, red and blue, you can do this and you can make a colour. A little bit more of the rose madder. A little bit more of the raw sienna. And I think I'm about there. Yeah, that works perfectly. I'll add a tiny bit more rose because I like it to be a bit pinkier. Okay, so I'm going to go into this wet paint that's settled nicely whilst I've been mixing that colour, and I'm looking at the shape of the tree. So I'm dabbing with a round number 6. And I just want a really nice rounded shape. The paint's nice and thick, so it's not going to go too far. Just that upward stabbing action. Just create a really, really nice shape. Rinse my brush out. And then we need quite a dark trunk, so I'm going to aim for a little bit of sepia. So I'm dabbing that fairly neat onto the brush. And then I'm just going to pop in the trunk. And you can just dab a few random bits of that dark through. The trick is this is in the distance, so you don't want it to look, just softening that bottom, that is too dominant or too detailed at this stage. If there's any bits that haven't moved enough, you can just dab in with a little bit of water, and that will just help it to flow a little bit further. If you want any little bits of light, you can just with a dry brush just lift a few out. So that's a distant copper beech, and then we're going to go for a copper beech detailed in the foreground. So I'm going to use a hog hair brush. This is a soft hog hair brush, but any sort of hog hair brush or an old child's paint brush, anything that's splayed out will work great for stippling. You need to make sure it's clean, make sure it's dry, and then you're going to go into thick paint and dab. You're dabbing and you're dabbing upright. This is a fairly dense tree, which is why I've chose to stipple. Sometimes I choose to dry brush, sometimes I choose to sponge, but stippling works best on dense trees. So just keep loading the brush up with paint, and you can see that action at these sides and how I'm creating. So I'm just arching it downwards to each side, varying the dabbing so that I get that nice edge. At the top, you can just level it upwards to get those nice edges as well. It's just about how you use the brush and what the thickness of the paint is. So now I'm coming towards the bottom. I'm putting the brush more vertical to get those edges happening to come down. If I add a little bit of the sepia into that mix, I'm just going to add a little bit more of the rose madder. I just want a little bit of a darker mix, so adding something like a brown will just give you that, but you need to make sure it's thick enough. I can just bring that over and add a little bit more density in there. You can do this sort of action as many times as you want and really build up a tree and give it a real density if you want to. So remember to angle your brush, whichever angle you're working to get those branches to come out in the direction that you want. And then we'll give that brush a bit of a rinse off, and then I'm just going to go in with my round number 6 and some of the sepia dabbed on. So the sepia was neat. Just create the bottom trunk. So there's not really much because it's a fairly dense tree that you can see in between, but there is a few dabs of dark if you want to apply any little dabs of the sepia. That would work. I'm sort of creating a wiggly line as to where those planes of foliage are. This is why it's important for you to see a pictorial reference so you know what you're trying to achieve. I'm just going to make this trunk a little bit bigger. And again with a wet brush, I'm just softening that bottom. Put a dab of green in if you want for the sap green area. Some grass. What you can do as well is lift out light on a trunk. So if you wait long enough, I'll give one side shadow. I'm going to pop a shadow in here. So if this side is the shadowed side, that would need a little bit more dark. So we're going to pop a little bit more dark in there. This side would be the lighter side. So to lift out light, you've just got to wait for the paint to be not as wet, and then just with a dry brush, you can just lift a little bit of light out. Like that. Okay, so that's Copper Beech.